Can you hear me? Welcome to another live stream. This is the September 2025 questions and answers for Roman Catholic Media. I'm Stephen Heiner, and with us, as always, is His Excellency Bishop Donald Sanborn. Hello, Your Excellency.
Hello, Stephen.
We had a technical mishap earlier today, and there were some questions, some super chats that were posed. Don't worry, those were captured by Father Disposito, and I'll be asking them soon. But firstly, Your Excellency, how are you doing?
I'm fine.
Did you notice that we had something sent to us by one of our listeners? This is
I see.
a Godzilla-like creature, I suppose. And we thought maybe we could name it Leo.
Well, yeah. Well, let's talk about that.
We just did Leo Watch last week, obviously. So you've talked about the destruction that he's bringing, which is far worse than what we've seen from Francis, really.
It's far worse than what Godzilla did to Tokyo. That's for sure. Yes.
Hence the possible name. We'll see what happens there.
Yes.
So there was also a question asked in the Leo Watch live stream, which we will pose as well. But I want to ask the ones that were posed in the earlier accidental live stream. YouTube triggered something. Jimmy Hunjin, 10 pounds. Thank you, Jimmy. Can we reform anew the established confraternities that were approved before the council to enjoy the indulgences granted to them?
Well, those indulgences would still be in effect. The thing is, who is moderating those confraternities and who has the authority to moderate them? And obviously, if they're still in the possession of the Novus Ordo, then you can't join it. And we don't have the authority to be a moderator of a confraternity. That's something you have to be appointed to. So in that sense, it's practically impossible.
So it's not enough to simply do the activities prescribed by the confraternity. You actually have to be enrolled.
I think so, but I don't know all of those rules, but I think so.
Also from Jimmy, 50 pounds. Thank you, Jimmy. Did His Excellency ever read the 1976 interview between Archbishop Lefebvre and Paul VI? I was shocked at Montini's petulant attitude, shutting down a line of question regarding religious liberty and blaming Lefebvre for worsening the crisis in the church.
I probably did, but that's a long time ago. That's
1976 was a while ago.
49 years ago. I mean, I just can't remember all of the details of it.
If you have, Jimmy, if you have some particular quotes, feel free to put that into the chat, and I could read them to His Excellency, and he could respond to that. You don't have to send another super chat for that. Just put it in there. Also from earlier today, Your Excellency, ABF for 28 Canadian dollars. Thank you. Your Excellency, what advice would you have for someone with OCD related to homosexuality?
OCD, what is OCD?
I think it's something compulsive disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, Your
Yes.
Excellency. These are people who might wash their hands 10 or 15 times.
Yes, I know what it is.
And related to homosexuality, I'm married with 2 children, but this fear of having homosexual tendencies torments me.
Well, a fear is one thing. The actual tendency is another thing. It could be just a product of OCD. That is, they're afraid of everything. Undue fears. So I would just dismiss it as something that's an undue fear.
When you say undue fear, Your Excellency, what are you parsing there?
Well, in other words, a fear has to have some basis in reality. You might fear a thunderstorm or a tornado if it's not too far away from you, and there has to be some basis in reality for it. And it would seem that, I without speaking to him and without further, let's say, investigation, it would seem that it would be a product of that obsessive compulsive disorder. Excuse me.
The same person had a question. Are vulgar or sexual jokes mortal sin?
They could be. It depends, again, on the listeners. Probably in the Navy, they are not. In other words, but they could easily be scandalous company, good company, you might say. Not that the Navy is bad, but it's, you know what I mean.
Yes.
Sailors are a little bit graphic, we might say. Uh,
Earthy.
Earthy, yes. I mean, it depends, I think, on the scandal that is given, but also there, we shouldn't have our minds on those things. It's just something to be avoided by any decent Catholic. I mean, I would say the gravity of it would be where it is used.
I think the questioner probably has on his mind what you frequently said, Your Excellency, that regarding the sixth and ninth commandments, it's almost always grave matter when we're talking about sin.
Yes, yes. Well, in other words, acts are grave matter. Talking in a bawdy manner could be venial according to circumstances.
All right. So ABF, if you have further, if Your Excellency has answered your question regarding that undue fear, great. If you have a further follow-up, once again, as with other questions of this matter, we would normally refer you to the contact us forms. It's hard for His Excellency to answer generically such a specific question. Your Excellency, people have asked us about this before, so I thought I would bring some props today in relation to things that people might want to have in their Catholic library. Was talking with the mass coordinator at our Louisiana mission, and this conversation started. And one of the books I had suggested was The Roman Martyrology. This is a way for you to revisit some of the hair-raising tortures of our forebears in the faith.
Make sure, however, that it is an older edition, because that was all revised later on.
I'm referring for cutoff years for all of these, Your Excellency.
Yes,
So
okay.
what year do you feel safe?
I'd say 1958.
1958. And this edition, which is put out by Loretto, comes from, it says 1749.
That's a good day. That's good.
But it might have been, I think this is before, Your Excellency.
All right. Well, that's true of any book. A lot of books were revised and modernized, so be careful.
The Liturgical Year by Dom Garanger. This is 15
Yes.
volumes, so this is just one of the volumes.
Yes, classic.
And this is something that can be, I've seen Catholic families read it to their children or have their children practice their reading and read. And some of the days it's 2 or 3, but let's say Holy Saturday, I think it's 50 or 60 pages. So there's always plenty to
Yes.
learn there.
And that's yes, you're talking, yes.
The
okay.
Liturgical Year,
Yes.
yes. Butler's Lives of the Saints. You've given specific instruction on what to avoid regarding this.
The Atwater edition. Atwater was a modernist, and so he cut out a lot of miracles that he thought were not miracles, etc., which is typical of modernists. And so yes, the traditional text before Atwater got a hold of it.
And do you remember that year, Your Excellency?
No, I don't.
I remember consulting you because this is the one that I bought according to the year that you
That's
had
a good
said.
one. What you have is a good one. That edition is a good one.
So Butler's Lives of the Saints, if you are looking for this on eBay and you want to make sure that the listing is correct, just send a contact us form. That's a good year for us to have anyway, and I can double check with His Excellency on that. We also have, these are harder to get, the Catholic Encyclopedia, and we had an extra edition which was sold on the website some time ago, and someone had told me he had put it in his cart and he had forgot to check out and it was gone in the morning. What year are we thinking about for the Catholic
Well,
Encyclopedia?
that was
Your
published in
Excellency?
1906, I think. But like all encyclopedias, it's all according to author. Some authors are better than others, and it's not impossible that you could find something in there that was a little, let's say, bad tendency. In other words, I just can't guarantee
You
the
can't
whole
you can't
thing,
vouch for the whole thing.
because it's according to there's some great authors in there, but then there could be some others, and that period 1906, that's period of modernism, so you could have, that means it was put together in the 1890s if it came out in 1906. But overall I would say yes, it is reliable. I look at it quite a bit for general information.
I picked a 1913 edition because I wanted one from the reign of St. Pius X, Your Excellency.
Yes,
So
yes.
you can find these on eBay. I don't know how easy it is to get it in other parts of the world outside the US, but UK and US can quite easily buy from eBay. You can buy from eBay from other countries as well, but the shipping might be more difficult. And then just something you said last week, Your Excellency, about the liturgy. You said that you are a big fan of the prayer books as
Hmm.
opposed to the missals, that people don't necessarily feel that they need to have to follow along every prayer. And I really like the Blessed Be God. This is a rebound edition I have. This is a 1927 version.
Excellent. Yes.
And it has prayers, it has Stations of the Cross, it has
Hmm.
excerpts from the Imitation of Christ. So
Hmm. Hmm.
it's great for travel, Your Excellency.
Yeah. No, it's. I recommend that over the missal because, as I said, sometimes even the priest, when he is reading some passages from sacred scripture, thinks I better look this up because I don't entirely understand the application of it, especially on big feasts sometimes or Holy Week. The average layperson probably doesn't know the explanation of each gospel, and also the how the psalms, the offertory verse, for example, communion verse, gradual, how they relate to the feast. And a priest would know that, but it's you have to need some education to understand all of those things. And as I said, the main way in which the faithful participate in the mass is to offer the mass through the priest, their own worship through the priest, and their own sacrifices and good works through the priest. See, and those old prayer books would elaborate those ideas in your head. You see, that's why I like them.
It's something else that I think we're out of tune with being in our civilization, Your Excellency. They have devotions and prayers for the month, or
Hmm.
devotions and prayers for particular saints, so that we can keep all those different figures before our minds.
Hmm.
We have a question, and thank you for those of you who are hitting like and letting us know where you are watching from. If you haven't done that already, hitting the like button pushes the video out to subscribers, and letting us know where you're watching from allows His Excellency to hear where all of you are tuning in from. This question, Your Excellency, is in the classic phrase "long time listener, first time caller." Someone named Elaine Andreski, Your
Oh,
Excellency. You
yes.
might be familiar, so I'm
Yes.
classifying her as a long time listener.
Yes.
So she has a couple questions for you. One, a few years ago, I read an old book, What God Hath Not Joined Together. I forget the author's name right now, but based on the book, it highlighted the frater soror vow, aka the brother sister vow, a means that provides a path for divorced and remarried couples, with or without children, for returning to the sacraments. Could you elaborate on this subject? I don't think it is widely known nor talked about, and I find it interesting that the church does allow a return to the faith for divorced and remarried couples based on certain conditions that must be followed.
Yes, it is permitted. There's a whole canonical study on it that we have in the library that was done in the 1950s. And it is this: you have couples that are, for one reason or another, invalidly married, and they are able to approach the sacraments on these conditions. First of all, that they live as brother and sister. And that means brother and sister. Whatever would be inappropriate between brother and sister would be inappropriate with them. They must sleep in separate bedrooms. So they must take all the precautions necessary to live as brother and sister. Secondly, there must be a serious reason. So, for it could be children usually are the reason, but it could be economic. For example, an elderly couple that needs both Social Security incomes in order just to live. You see, that would be a serious economic reason. But if there's not a serious reason, then they would have to split up. And the third is that it be secret, that no one can know about it. And very often in the past and before Vatican II, they would tell people to go to a different parish for Mass or even just move away. If it were well known in the parish that they were invalidly married, then that ruins the whole thing because of scandal. People don't understand. You
But what
see.
would the explanation be that they would give at the other parish? Would they just say that they are.
Well, no, I mean, probably, I'm going to guess that probably the pastor of parish A would write to pastor B and say, these people are in this situation and it's all taken care of. You see.
But in relation to the people at parish B, do they treat this couple? Did this
Well,
couple
they don't know.
advertise that
They don't know. No, they don't speak about it at all. I mean, no, it has to be completely secret.
they're presumed to be married, even though people don't know
Yes,
that their
yes,
private life is
yes,
not married?
yes, yes.
Boy, it's a hard saying, Your Excellency, but as Elaine points out, it's a path for divorced and remarried couples to return to the faith.
It is. It's more common than you would think,
Well,
because
we
there's a
wouldn't
lot
know.
of
It's a secret.
yes, I know it's a secret, but it's there's a lot of invalid marriages today. A lot.
I'm thinking His Excellency knows of a few cases. He can't say anything.
Right.
And the second question is a bit more difficult, Your Excellency. On your next trip to Michigan, what would you like for dinner?
The same thing that she usually serves.
Elaine, there's no change,
No
on
change.
that one.
I
So
never change.
change question mark. That's the phrase for His Excellency. All right. This was from the Leo watch stream. I deferred to this, Your Excellency, as I said it wasn't Leo specific. Is neoclassical sculpture painting depicting unclothed figures appropriate for a Catholic to enjoy or study?
Well, it depends. Some paintings and some sculptures are downright pornographic, even from the 17th and 18th centuries, downright pornographic. Obviously, those are excluded. Some, like depicting Adam and Eve, for example, could be done in a discreet way that would not excite anybody. But it really depends on the painting or the sculpture. But some of the Renaissance pieces and post-Renaissance pieces there's no reason for the nudity. You see, the nudity, as I explained it in another one of these, is to deny clothing. Clothing came with original sin. So when they're showing people nude, it's a sign that we are repudiating the effects of original sin. See, it's man as man, or without any reference to original sin. And in medieval art, the only time you saw nudity was Adam and Eve, and even then it was done in a very discreet way. See, so but there was that paganism and that neo-paganism of the Renaissance that brought on all of that stuff, and it really is decadence. As I said, I can't think of a single painting that is acceptable. There's really no reason for it.
Maybe the example I'm thinking of the David, Your Excellency, which is in the Accademia in Florence, that enormous statue by
Yeah,
Michelangelo.
I think that's pornographic.
Okay.
Yes.
So you would
there's
classify.
no reason. David did not run around like that.
Sure.
That's just man, and that's there's man as man with no clothes on. That's all it is.
The rippling musculature.
And then he said it's David. David did not run around like that. I'm sorry.
So you're classified it as historically
Oh,
inaccurate.
that's a
Your
piece of filth as far as I'm concerned.
All right. So if you go to the Accademia, it's right in down a main hallway. So
Florence,
just turn left, and
Yeah.
you can go up Fra Angelico's upstairs, which His Excellency does approve of.
Yes. Fra Angelico is great.
Your Excellency, we had a email from somebody. His regular Sunday priest is not with the Institute. He's with a different group.
All right.
He told me that I cannot tell people that it is sinful to go to the Unicum Mass. He further stated that one could regularly go to even Orthodox Masses regularly, as long as you don't ascribe yourself as a member of the parish. He cited Canon 2261 in favor of these propositions, as well as other clerics' articles on the matter. He said, valid priests equals valid sacraments without any regard for jurisdiction nor unity with authority. Do you agree with that position, Your
No,
Excellency?
not at all. No. St. Thomas Aquinas said that masses offered outside of the church, while valid, although valid, do not give grace. They are not accepted by God. They're unacceptable because they are not presented by the hands of the church, you might say. Just like Cain's offering was unacceptable to God. So the offering of the Mass, first of all, it's objectively a mortal sin that someone outside the church, and I'm referring to the Orthodox, should be using Catholic sacraments. That's a mortal sin, objectively. Pius VI said that about the schismatic clergy of France, that it's a mortal sin for them to be functioning like that way. So, no, he's way off on that. That priest is way off. Secondly, I would suggest that they look at I talked about Unicum. It would take me a long time to explain it. The essential problem with Unicum is this. You must understand that the principal priest of every Mass is our Lord Jesus Christ, the eternal high priest and head of the Catholic Church. So the Mass is an act of Christ as head of the church. That means every Mass is connected to Christ as head of the church. Therefore, in order that a Mass be Catholic, it must be offered in union with the hierarchy of the Catholic Church and permitted by the hierarchy of the Catholic Church, authorized by the hierarchy of the Catholic Church. Otherwise, it is a schismatic Mass. So let's apply that. If Leo is the Pope, all right, then yes, you should be unicum, but then you must also accept everything that Vatican II has taught, all of the disciplines, everything, the ecumenism, all of it, because if these people were popes, they cannot err in those things. They cannot prescribe to the church what is harmful to souls. So if you're saying that, if you're unicum, if Leo or Paul VI or any of those people were or are your pope, well then go to the new Mass.
So you can't just pick an unicum Mass and discard all the Vatican II stuff, Your Excellency?
No, because it all is linked up. If those people are popes, then we in all good conscience could follow everything that they have prescribed for us from the point of view of doctrine, discipline, and liturgy. Because the Catholic Church is indefectible. You can always follow the Catholic Church, what it tells you to do. See, I am with you all days, even to the consummation of the world. Whatsoever thou shalt bind upon earth shall be bound also in heaven. That's very strong. That means if they are the Pope, these people are the Pope or popes, that means whatever they bind is bound also in heaven. So you're already in a terrible contradiction. That is, you're saying a Mass that is outside of and against the authority of the would-be Roman pontiff that you're naming in the canon. That makes no sense whatsoever. And whatever doesn't make sense is wrong. All right? It's a sure sign of error.
You said this before, Your Excellency. What is logically wrong must be morally wrong as well.
It is. And it's just... so that's the key to understanding it. It must be an action of the hierarchy of the Catholic Church. If the hierarchy is false, as we're saying, then that Mass must not have that name in it in order to be Catholic. So if some intruder came into the Vatican, shot down the true Pope and said, I'm the Pope, he would be a false Pope. You see, and you could not put his name in the canon. Otherwise, you are making your Mass a non-Catholic schismatic Mass. See, so everything is contained in that one little phrase in the Mass.
The irony here, too, Your Excellency, this priest says, you could go to Orthodox Masses as long as you don't ascribe yourself as a member of the parish. So just don't register, Your Excellency. The hilarious thing is, Orthodox clergy are very curious about strangers. They will ask you your name. They will ask, and if you think an Orthodox priest is just going to allow some Catholic family to regularly come or even communicate. And the irony, Your Excellency, what is the first thing that the Orthodox did when they broke communion with Rome? They addressed the unicum issue.
They did. That's right. Yes, I mean that's.
So this Catholic priest is telling people to go to the Orthodox.
Well, I'm sorry, but there's a tremendous ignorance there of Catholic theology concerning the Mass, and concerning the hierarchy.
Why do you think a Catholic priest would say this to?
Lack of sufficient training.
And that ties into another question, Your Excellency, I think earlier here, one of the super chats. How am I supposed to know about a priest's training? Here it is. Marie Catherine, $10. Thank you, Marie. When traveling, should one go to a priest formerly and you don't know if he has been conditionally ordained? What if there are rumors of his past violations of 6th and 9th with minors? There's a twist to that question.
Well, I'd say in any doubt, either concerning ordination or concerning let's say the integrity of the priest, the moral integrity of the priest, I would say stay away. Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. If some priest has done that, he should resign from the priesthood and just get a job.
So back to the previous question about training, Your Excellency, how is a faithful supposed to ascertain what the training of any given priest is?
Be very difficult for lay people to do that. I think they should, they could look at the seminary, how long they are in the seminary, what their training is in the seminary. We go 7 years, and we publish what courses we're giving, etc. And
Well, live stream some of them too.
yes, so I think that'd be the only way to do it, but many times that lack of training or existence of training comes out by the way in which priests speak, in which they act, with their sermons,
Advice they give.
advice they give. Yes.
Why is length of training important to you, Your Excellency? Let's say if someone does only a 4-year formation, could you envision a priest being ordained in a 4-year period who's had no other seminary training?
Well, it's not according to the old rules. It was 2 years of philosophy and 4 years of theology. That's what they had. And so we actually add another year on that, propedeutic year, which is training them. Many times they come in, they are lacking even basic skills of English language. So we do that a propedeutic year. So I would say, especially in this context, I don't think it is sufficient, because I think the priests need to know more today than they did, say, before the council, because they just had to take in diocesan seminaries basic courses in theology and philosophy. They did not have to be, as parish priests, theologians, but in a certain way, the priests today almost have to be theologians, in the sense that they must respond constantly to attacks from the Novus Ordo or from fellow traditionalists, what we just talked about, the unicum issue. That's it takes a lot of thought and research to answer those questions. So my opinion is that they have to be trained even more than they were in the past. Also, they don't have recourse to any chancery office about various problems. We get questions from Europe and from Australia and from this country about, what about this marriage case, or what about this? They think I know everything. I don't, but I have to look it up. But still, there was a way in which to inform yourself very easily about marriage questions or other theological questions in the past. That doesn't exist. So the priest has to be better formed today than I think that he always was.
Do you suspect, too, Your Excellency, that 2+4 combo you're talking about, philosophy and theology, was also giving space for the young man to mature emotionally as well? I mean, an 18-year-old, a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old, by the time he gets to be 24 and he's had all the philosophical and theological formation, there's also a part of the human person that is catching up with the learning.
Yes.
He's,
yes.
he's also more believable as a priest already at 24.
Yes. And there's a high rate of attrition. I mean, I would say ours is 50% from day one that they enter to day of ordination. I would say it's 50% at least.
So we have a question from the Elaine Andreski of North New Jersey, Your Excellency, at least culinarily, I suppose. Sue Brennan.
That's southern New Jersey.
Southern New Jersey.
Yeah, that wasn't your favorite subject.
Oh, geography. Of all the occasions where there were either false popes or times of persecution or times of unrest in the church, what was the longest stretch of time? Is this 60-year stretch of post-Vatican II the longest the church has ever seen such turmoil? I'm always looking for a glimmer of hope that this apostasy is not the only one the church has suffered for such a long period of time.
Well, it's never suffered an apostasy. That's the answer number one. This is an unprecedented situation where you have in the Vatican people who are promulgating falsehoods and evil disciplines and liturgy, which is not Catholic. It has never existed. So there was the Babylonian captivity. That was the 70 years, more or less, in which the popes resided in Avignon. That was known as the Babylonian captivity of the papacy. And yes, and that ended up dividing the church among many factions because there were 2, then 3 popes. And that was very bad. But any one of those persons could have been a true pope. They were all 100% Catholic, and they would have each one made a good pope. So that's really not comparable to our present situation. These men are modernists, heretics who are imposing modernism on the church. That's unprecedented.
Along that same line, Your Excellency, we had a conversation before you conferred minor orders on Monday. Just briefly, I talked about the investiture controversy, and I'd said I'd recently done more reading on it. And I lamented how terrible it would be to have both the civil authority against you, as well as confusion as to who the papal claimant was. And I said, it's so much simpler now. I know what the problem is. And you said, oh, I'd rather have 10x investiture controversy problems than what we have now.
Oh,
Can you explain that for our
yeah.
watchers and
Well,
listeners?
investiture was a problem in the Middle Ages. It was common because the church was so influential and owned a great deal of property. It was common for those monarchs to ask the Pope to be able to name bishops because there was so much interaction between church and state that the bishops were very influential in political matters as well. Just, but in fact, they were. In other words, they had a lot of influence. So they wanted their own men, so to speak. And so popes generally gave into that. I think it was a mistake, but generally gave into that. But the Pope reserved to himself the power to give jurisdiction to those bishops, ecclesiastical jurisdiction. So the nomination could come from the king. The Pope would say, all right, you are, I approve the nomination. Now you have the jurisdiction to teach, rule, and sanctify in the diocese. The kings were always vying for that because obviously if you only have a bishop elect, as we used to say in New York, that and 15 cents will get you on the subway. In other words, you're not a bishop with power. And so if the Pope refused to approve and give that jurisdiction, then they were stymied. You see, that's what Napoleon wanted from Pius VII, and reputedly struck him and beat him up in Fontainebleau until he gave in. And then the next day, the cardinal said, "You made a big mistake," and he rescinded what he gave to Napoleon. Also, Pascal II did the same thing. He gave it to the Emperor of Germany, and everybody said you did the wrong thing, and then he rescinded it. That was in the Middle Ages. So it has always been the church was persecuted by the Roman Empire, and then it emerged from the Roman Empire as the religion of state. But then all the other problems came thereafter because then all of the monarchs wanted to interfere with the church. You see, so the church went through many centuries of monarchical interference. And so the King of France, for example, had the right to name bishops. In other words, choose a bishop, and is that famous story of Louis XVI.
Now that's regarding you want to tell that story regarding Louis?
I think I did once, but I'll
You
tell
have,
it
but
again.
there's always
Yes,
new watchers and
the
listeners.
Archbishop of Paris died when Louis XVI was King of France. And somebody suggested to him the Archbishop of Toulouse for Paris. And he said, well, I think it would be appropriate if the Archbishop of Paris believed in God. That was the state of the clergy at the time.
At that time, even.
Yes, that was in the late 18th century. But that whole 18th century was a bad time for the church in Europe, a very bad time. Not anything like now, because the faith was all intact, but you had some weak popes in there that gave in too much to the pressures of those courts.
And there are some privileges that were sought by the monarchs that were commendable, Your Excellency. Are we going to be their most Catholic majesties or their most, majestic Christian majesties, whatever it might be?
Yeah, so Spain was his most Catholic majesty. France was his most Christian majesty. So,
right. Yeah, that's a good kind of competition, right, Your Excellency?
Yes.
I do think the Spanish monarch still retains the privilege of either carrying the gospel in procession or maybe even singing it. Would you support something like that?
It was King of France had that too. He would sing the gospel in a dalmatic.
Would you mind the monarch doing that, Your Excellency, as long as he had a good singing voice?
I mean, the church never. Well, yeah, sure, yeah, but the church never objected to it. Who am I to condemn it?
How edifying it would be to see the king
Yes.
singing the gospel at mass,
Yes,
Your Excellency.
yes.
This comes from our Englishman in Florida, Your Excellency. There's only one that I know of.
I can't imagine who that might be.
I was recently speaking to a Protestant who said, Protestants all believe the same religion. They just emphasize different things. How would you respond to that?
Well, they believe the religion that's in their head. I mean, in the sense that, how do you define religion? Do you define it as some warm feeling about God? Well, then, yes, everybody has a warm feeling about God. But religion is, first of all, it's faith. That means it's dogmas. and its worship and its disciplines, uh, they are split up, you know, in splinters. You know,
30,000, I think.
yeah, this is ridiculous. You know, they split off and split off and split off, and they don't have the mark of unity that Christ intended for his church. Because everything is subjective. You know, they read the Bible and I think it means this, I think it means that, and then they split up. It's absurd. It's as if Christ ascended into heaven and left behind a stack of Bibles on Mount Olivet, you know, and then they all rushed for their Bibles and decided to, you know, and if it weren't for the printing press, that you couldn't have Protestantism. In the Middle Ages, a Bible was written out by monks and it was, you know, kept in a special place. But the printing press in 1453, that enabled them to say, well, the Bible, you know, you put the Bible in everybody's hands and then you interpret it yourself.
Have as many churches as Bibles.
Yes, no, that's absurd. But, you know, faith for the Protestant is a trust in God. So in that sense, everybody has a trust, or all religious people have a trust in God. Well, then, yes, you could say everybody is the same religion, but that's absurd.
So first super chat for today from Unicum Omnibus, 20 Australian dollars. For those who don't understand Latin, Your Excellency, it's a strange title, I suppose, regarding today's discussion.
Yeah.
I understand how the thesis distinguishes in calling Prevost a pope-elect, not an anti-pope. However, once a Vatican II pope-elect dies, since he has completed a false occupancy of the seat, could he be called an anti-pope?
No, he would still be a pope-elect. No, it would be as if, say, a president of the United States were elected in November and died before he could be inaugurated.
Has never happened, but
he would still have that title of elect. You see, no, that's true.
And then maybe President Trump would create a something for him on the hallway and just maybe a tombstone.
Yes.
He would have been there, but not.
Yes.
Cardinal Imburito took $10. Anti-Tooks online post the same couple pictures they think are evidence of the great Archbishop Took returning to the Novus Ordo at the end of his life. Are these lies or are these lies? You only really have one answer.
Well,
there.
he did, in this sense that there was a Vietnamese order of priests or something from Missouri, and he went there and he signed something that as he was approaching death, whereby he sought to reconcile with Paul VI and said, I was wrong to have done the consecrations that I did. That I know firsthand from the superior of that congregation. Because
so we know he wasn't coerced to do that?
He was not coerced. No, he was not coerced. And that superior said he was completely in his right mind when he did that.
Does that bother you, Your Excellency?
No.
Why not?
Well, the only thing that we're interested in Archbishop Tuck or any of the bishops that did anything for tradition is that they gave us true bishops and true priests. I don't care anything else about, in a sense that's the only thing that is in a sense important. There are no gurus.
You wouldn't care if there was personal immorality, for example?
Not in the sense of the needs of the church. The needs of the church are absolute, that we need bishops and priests. So even if that were present, I would say that's still something that is acceptable or tolerable if that were present. Every single bishop that did something for tradition, there are 4 of them, that did something for tradition, has a certain defect. Bishop de Castro-Meyer was very, very good, but he permitted the new Mass in his diocese. And he hesitated on being a sedevacantist, and Archbishop Lefebvre was ambivalent, back and forth between cozying up to Rome and then condemning Rome and back and forth, and totally inconsistent. We were suffering from that today. It's inconsistency. Archbishop Took did a number of things that he shouldn't have done. I mean, he was imprudent in various things that he did, the Palmer de Troya. But he was very firm in declaring Paul VI not to be the Pope. He made a declaration. And then there's Bishop Mendez, and he was a Novus Ordo bishop. I saw him in 1989, he was not the most edifying person that I ever met. Let's put it that way. So the they all had problems, in the sense that there was no knight in shining armor, and they all had certain defects, but the church needed them to do what we're doing now. If we said, well, we can't go near this one because of that problem, the where would we be?
Well, you're worried about all bishops having defects, Your Excellency. That's why you want a bishop seminary.
If I were the Pope, I would have a bishop seminary in Rome, and it would be attached to the Vatican, and I would go over there every single day and look at these people and interview them and talk to them and find out what's in their heads. What brought on this situation in the church is abominable appointments made by Benedict XV, Pius XI, and Pius XII.
Your Excellency, there are some people whose heart has stopped because you've said something against Pius XII, who they consider to be the saintliest, most wonderful pope.
Well, I'm sure he was a very pious person. He was doctrinally absolutely sound, but he made abominable appointments of bishops, and those bishops showed up at Vatican II and changed the church.
So you can be doctrinally sound but politically imprudent.
Absolutely. There's a lot of that in the history of the church.
Well, I was thinking of Leo XIII, Your Excellency.
Leo XIII made some big blunders in the practical order.
Pius XI.
Pius XI, yeah, to a certain extent, but
I would go after him on the Cristeros, particularly, Your Excellency.
well, that's a whole other question.
We'll save that for
another
history.
time. But Clement XIV in suppressing the Jesuits,
Big one.
That paved the way for the French Revolution. Let's see. Benedict XIV sent a relic to Voltaire.
Unbelievable.
Yes, I know. I mean, and he was one of those who were trying to get along
This
with
is
the
an
modern world.
accommodationist.
Yes, and there were others that just made errors with regard to the long run. Now, it's very easy in hindsight to make these decisions or these judgments, but at the time, and Pius IX was elected as a liberal that would get along with the modern world, but then he disappointed them, let's say. Pius VII was elected as someone to get along with the revolution. Yes?
We've talked about Pius VII before. If you're interested in hearing His Excellency's take on this, we did a series back in the aughts called The Pendulating Papacy. Mm-hmm. And just search for it on YouTube and you can hear His Excellency hold forth. I'm sure you can guess His Excellency is of the anti-accommodationist school.
Yes, there were actually two parties in the 18th century, the Zelanti, who were the anti-accommodationists, and then the other party was I can't remember their name right now, but who were pro-accommodationist. Can't remember their name right now. I'll remember it after the show.
The Liberati.
Maybe. Yeah, the liberals. They meant well. In other words, the church had a problem. How do we deal with the modern world? And so, there were two schools of thought on it.
Said it Picante, $50. Thank you, Michael. Does the denial of the dogma of indefectibility reduce R&R to a type of Protestantism wherein the perfection of the church is purely invisible?
Well, R&R implicitly denies the indefectibility of the church. Recognize and resist. That is, he's the Pope, but we have to resist him, not in a specific command, like go rob a bank for me. That would be something in which you could legitimately resist him. He tells you to do something wrong. But in his universal promulgations of doctrine, discipline, and liturgy, he enjoys indefectibility of the church. That is, the church can never prescribe something that is harmful to souls or doctrines that are pernicious or heretical or in any way that would lead souls away from God. So if he's the Pope, then as I said recently, just in the same context, then you have to accept all of Vatican II and everything that's been done since Vatican II and just go to the new Mass because of that principle. If you're saying we have to reject all of that, then logically you must reject these Vatican II popes as true popes. You have to reject them. Otherwise, you implicitly deny the doctrine, the dogma of indefectibility of the church. So I don't know if that answers his question.
I think so.
Yeah,
And Michael, if it doesn't, feel free to follow up in the
yeah.
chat. LP for $25. Thank you, LP. Can His Excellency define the difference between a false church and a false religion?
A church is an institution, just like General Motors, you might say. So, but it's a moral entity. In other words, something like a state or a company. That's the church. Its content is the religion. So you think of a bottle with something in it. You see, so you establish a church different from the Catholic Church when either you say, I want nothing to do with the Catholic Church, I'm founding my own religion. So you self-excommunicate, you excommunicate yourself. It's like the schismatics, the Greek schismatics. We want nothing to do with Rome. They are already kicking themselves out by their own choice, even though they were excommunicated. The other way is that the church excommunicates you as a sect, you see. So, for example, Luther was excommunicated in 1521, and others, but so that's founding your own church, see. But the religion is the content of the church, you might say, just as the milk is the content of the bottle. So what has happened with Vatican II is that they did not found their own church, which they should have. It was the Old Catholics, which was a liberal early modernist group in 1871. They founded their own church, and if you read their council documents, it sounds like Vatican II. They were all liberals and leftists and everything. But you see, the whole idea was we're going to use the Catholic brand, St. Peter's Basilica, to promulgate all of this heresy that is condemned by Pius X and by many others. You see, and that is the problem, that they did not found their own church.
And this is why you're insistent on using the term Novus Ordo religion as opposed to Novus Ordo church?
Yes, because they did not found their own church. If they had founded their own church, we wouldn't have this problem.
So you would avoid using terms like that, Novus Ordo church, conciliar church?
I never use those terms.
You focus on using Novus Ordo religion?
Religion.
Okay. CM for $10. Thank you, CM. Are there any valid Eastern liturgies, or are there any Eastern liturgies sedevacantists? We've had this question come up before.
I don't know anything about the Eastern Rite, so I can't respond to that intelligently.
Theoretically, there could be an Eastern Rite sedevacantist who hasn't spoken to His Excellency, who is celebrating a non-unicum Eastern Rite Mass.
That's theoretically possible, but I don't know.
So if you are watching, Father, whoever you might be, Father Josephat, please reach out to His Excellency and we can get you squared away.
Well, I don't. In other words, I have no idea. I wouldn't even know how I would find out anything. So
well, he could tell you he's non-unicum, and he could seek out guidance and help.
All right.
So that's out there in case anyone is wondering. Sede Trad, $10. Thank you, Sede. If you have a question, please put it in the chat, and I will do my best to read it. If you are coming into the chat now, coming to the stream now, or since the last time I identified this, please hit the like button. It helps this stream get out to all the subscribers. YouTube pushes it out every time someone hits the like button. And also consider putting in where you are watching from today so that I can inform His Excellency. Tukwila, Washington, Cincinnati, Ohio, Orlando, Florida, Brooksville, Florida, Pittsburgh, Crystal River, Florida, Atlanta, Georgia. Another $5 from the American Sede Privationist. Corey, if you have a question, please feel free to put that in the chat, and I will try to get to that as soon as I can. Have you $2, $2 from my side? Thank you, my side. Have you talked to Monsignor Waugh from Canada?
Waugh.
Waugh.
You're from the thing, W-A-H, some Oriental. No, I haven't. Stephen's French is not exactly what it should be.
His Excellency has very high standards. It's nothing new.
No, I haven't. I never met him. I don't know him. You know,
Would you be opposed to speaking to him?
I'll talk to anybody that will recite the credo.
It's very generous. Nicole E, $5. Thank you, Nicole. What is the best Thomistic philosophy text in English?
Ah, probably Glenn.
That's two N's.
Yes. However, I don't think it's been reproduced, and the old books are dreadfully expensive, like $100 a piece.
And how many books?
Oh, there's a lot. There's probably 7 small books.
So it's a $700 investment.
Yes, if you can find them. I've just noticed that but I don't know. Maybe everything gets reproduced now, so I don't know if it's available or not. But Monsignor Glenn, he was a teacher at the St. Charles Seminary in Philadelphia, and he's. But there are others. There's a very good one that is not quite as elaborate as that, and I can't remember the name of it. I just had it on the shelf the other day, and I can't remember the name of it. But I could find out and let the person know. The others in English. There's the Jesuit. Again, that's hard to find. There's a Jesuit series that was done in England in the late 19th century. Um, um, there's Ogon was translated, but and that's available, I think. But Ogon is deep. He was given the task to write the philosophy book for the Dominicans. And he did. And so I think it might be over the head of an average layperson.
Okay. €5 from Oko Jamos. Thank you, Oko. Is the Church Fathers' condemnation of acting relevant to Shakespearean or later drama or opera? It seems that later popes considered acting a valid trade.
Actually, I don't know that the fathers condemned it, but yes, it would always have a context. In other words, acting in the Roman world, or when they were may have been something for very dissolute people, or it may have been themes that were very dissolute and dirty, etc. So that may be what they're talking about. Acting in itself, however, could never be considered immoral. So it would be a context of acting. And again, opera. Most opera is. I mean, there's some decent operas written in the 17th century and 18th century, but even in the late 18th century, they got bawdy and dirty. And 19th century, it's all filth. It's all dirty filth. That's all it is, and boring. And plots that are make you fall asleep. They're so stupid. And a lot of screaming and yelling going on, and so I would say opera, no, but it depends on the context of the age.
And you're actually, I was thinking Saint Therese. We've seen her dressed as Saint Joan of Arc, so I think she was in a play for that. So
yeah, there's nothing wrong with it.
And sometimes can be used as a vector for grace. You're actually, I'm thinking I might have remembered it from the Martyrology, but there was an actor getting mock baptized, and then he was baptized, and at that moment he received an infusion of the faith, and he repudiated the entire play, and he was taken off and martyred.
Oh, okay, well.
And so there's an example of acting being a vector
There were
for.
passion plays.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's still
Middle
going
Ages
on in some places.
Yeah, it's and yeah, no, that's perfectly normal.
Pooh and Tigger's mom, $10. Thank you for the super chat. If you have a question, please put it in the stream, and I will do my best to answer it. Jimmy Hunjin, £20. Thank you, Jimmy. I heard from a Sede friend that an R&R cleric, when pushed, informed her that he prayed for Bergoglio insofar as he should be the Pope. Was this a concoction of Icone?
I cannot answer that question. I haven't been associated with Icone for many, many years, and all I would comment on that is that they see an obvious problem, that they don't obey him in anything virtually, and yet he's the Pope, and that is a very clear theological problem, and he's probably trying to deal with that.
Okay. Joe Paula, $10. Thank you, Joe. What is a subdeacon? Are they ordained?
That is one of the major orders. It's considered there's 4 minor orders and 3 major orders. It means somebody that is able to actually participate in the at the altar in the high mass, and so he can pour the wine into the chalice. Certain other things, he holds the paten, certain other minor things, but nonetheless he's at the altar functioning and aiding in the offering of the mass. He also is permitted to wash the sacred linens, and he's bound to the breviary, and he also gives up his right to marry. So it's a big step. It's like getting married to the church, subdiaconate. So there's minor things about it, but there's major things too about it.
So Corey has put another $5 in. Thank you, Corey. How will the RCI lay brothers support themselves? I think the SSPX religious make coffins. Perhaps we will see Sede Privationist beer.
Well, we will use the brothers according to their talents. So we have to see how. No one has presented himself so far, but we will cross that bridge when we come to it. We'll have them do something that is productive.
I mean, making coffins is a profitable profession. Your
Well, you're
Excellency.
never going to lose your job.
It seems that there's always customers.
Yes.
Tariq Licour, $10. Thank you, Tariq. The CMRI allows you to go to masses in union with the Pope in certain circumstances. Does this make their masses to avoid? And what was your last meeting with Archbishop Lefebvre?
Their masses, whose masses? In other words, CMRI masses, or
I think
that's confusing.
Allows you to go to masses in union with the Pope in certain circumstances. Does that make their masses to avoid? Well, I think you've already answered whether the unicum masses should be avoided.
The unicum masses must be avoided. I cannot recommend going to the mass of a congregation that says you can go to the Orthodox, or that you could go to a mass in which the priest is mentioning the name of Leo. I cannot recommend that.
All right. $25 from Latin Mass. Thank you, Latin Mass. Does our Lord have a sense of humor?
No.
And why is that, Your Excellency?
Because humor involves the association of absurd concepts. For example, in slapstick comedy, think of, a lady at a table. This was in The Little Rascals, sitting there beautifully dressed, and then somebody puts a pie in her face. You see, that's two ideas, dignity and indignity, together, and then you laugh because she has a pie in her face. You see, that's slapstick comedy. Anything humorous is the association of two absurd things. In other words, things that contradict each other. And so our Lord, in his obviously divine intellect, and in his sacred human intellect with infused knowledge, could not do that. See that? So he probably smiled, but he didn't laugh. That's the opinion of theologians.
Well, I'm thinking, Your Excellency, is it wrong for us to laugh there when you're thinking of the lady? I mean, you just describing it to me.
No, because we don't have infused divine knowledge. We can associate absurd things. You see, so that's what humor is. And it's perfectly normal.
Occasions in which our Lord smiled, Your Excellency, I'm thinking of him telling was it Nathaniel who was in the tree, and you are the Messiah, and it says, if you think did you say this just because I saw you in the tree? Greater things, I'll tell you that.
Yes.
Our Lord might have had a smile on his face in that occasion. And
yes, he was very gentle and nice, and I'm sure he didn't have always a serious face.
So when you say sense of humor here, you're thinking in terms of
laughter. Yeah, that's
our Lord would smile, but you wouldn't say that he laughed.
I'm sure he smiled when the little children were brought to him. He was very approachable, humble.
Those children did something. Could that have made him laugh, perhaps?
I don't know. You'd have to ask our blessed Lord.
Because I think that's the zeroing in on the sense of humor, what that means and what that relates to. You say you were relating to dignity and indignity. And
yes, I would tend to say that he didn't laugh, but he smiled.
All right, I hope that answers your question, Latin Mass. Fair to remember, $5. Stephen should send a Philly cheesesteak to Elaine. Well, Elaine's cooking has no peer in Michigan, so I don't think she has to be sent any recipes. But I appreciate the sentiment. Jimmy Hunjin, 10 pounds. During these times, would one be permitted to emulate a religious order, for example, the Dominicans, and to also keep their rite of mass, breviaries, etc.? You've answered this question in part before, Your Excellency, or variations of this.
Well, I think you could do a knockoff, which is essentially what he's saying, emulate. In other words, yes, you could imitate it. Dominican rites, etc. I don't see a reason why not. If you're trying to emulate the Dominicans as much as possible, I think so. But again, I'm not an authority, so I can't say. But I don't see why not. I don't think it offends anything.
The Santos lives, $5. Thank you, Santos. Thank you, Your Excellency, and Mr. Stephen from Georgia. We have another baby on the way that will make 5.
Oh, congratulations.
Congratulations. Owen Terrell. Please correct my pronunciation on that spelling.
That's the name of the modernist, so you better change it.
Eoin is an Irish pronunciation, Your Excellency. I'm not sure.
Terrell.
No, Eoin is the first name. I think it's N, but
Well, what's the last name?
Terrell.
Yes, well, he was Irish. Terrell was Irish.
Right.
So
I'm happy to be corrected on the pronunciation. Please put that in the chat. My Irish ancestors would be embarrassed about mispronunciations.
Probably a lot of things.
Many things, as His Excellency notes. Can you explain inadvertence and its relation to mortal sin? Also, can you give advice on how to discern if an action contains inadvertence?
Well, inadvertence is a form of ignorance. You're not paying attention to what you're doing or not paying sufficient attention to what you're doing. So, for example, if you purposely drive recklessly and you know you're driving recklessly and you have an accident, see, that's advertence. But if you are distracted for some reason, or you're tired, or see, that's inadvertence, and that reduces guilt. Whether it reduces mortal to venial is, in the judgment of the confessor. And there's a lot of ifs.
Can you think of a case, Your Excellency, as an example, illustrative?
Oh, it's well, sometimes of driving, this is where you cause damage because of lack of advertence, where that reduces the voluntary. See, the voluntary is everything in a sin, how voluntary it is. So it reduces the voluntary, because you wouldn't do it otherwise. If you had been paying attention, you would not have done it. But still, there's a guilt in not paying attention where you should.
Okay. Or a doctor who is used to being around nudity, could he inadvertently, while he's normally on guard, inadvertently have an impure thought, and this would reduce his culpability?
Well, any inadvertence will reduce culpability, but where the law
Whether it would go
line,
to mortal versus venial for the confessor.
Yes, because some mortal sins are worse than others.
But as His Excellency has been saying, if you've been missing his conferences on that, it's on the MHT seminary courses channel. If you're not subscribed to that channel, you're going to miss those conferences. So His Excellency has been talking about mortal sin recently.
What was the second part of that question?
Can you give advice on how to discern if an action contains inadvertence?
Well, it just you have to examine yourself about how much attention you were giving to what you were doing. The key would be that you would not have done it if you had been paying attention. That would be a key to inadvertence. For example, that terrible thing that happened in Grand Blanc, that was plenty of advertence. In other words, driving into the doors of that church and then burning up the church. He knew exactly what he was doing. But if you were, say, nearsighted or something like that, and you made a left turn and you crashed into the doors of the church, you see, perhaps you should have had your glasses on, or there was no voluntary in it. But still, you're guilty for a failure to pay attention. You see, so there's a certain guilt there. So it all depends on how much you intend to do it.
Say maybe we're giving two grand examples. This could be, I'm saying my rosary and I inadvertently get distracted with a thought about work, and then 3 mysteries later I realize I've been out you know,
Yes.
daydreaming about this issue, I've inadvertently not been praying.
Your prayers still count when you have involuntary distraction. So you could go through a whole rosary with an involuntary distraction if you have some problem or something bad happened. You can say the whole rosary, but as long as you intend to do what should be done at the beginning, all of your prayers have the same value.
I suppose that could even happen to priests at Mass, Your
Oh,
Excellency.
happens a lot because the mass is so rote. I mean, 50 years I've been saying the
A
mass.
few
That's a lot of
years.
masses. Yeah, and you could almost do it in your sleep, so you easily get distracted because you just know how to do it.
Speaking of many years of masses, Your Excellency, we heard tell recently in a conversation with a visiting priest that he had heard of a situation firsthand. It had been related to him that a priest had said a mass on an airplane using the airplane tray, and it was just absolutely shocking. Of course, there's many reasons why this would be inadvisable, Your Excellency, but why should a priest not take the commitment to saying mass on a daily basis to this level?
Well, first of all, a priest is not obliged to say mass every day, and most people don't realize that. Only a few times a year, according to canon law.
This would be All Souls Day and Christmas.
No,
There's
there's
no obligation
no,
to say
no.
those.
He is obliged to attend mass every day, but he is not obliged to say mass every day. So if he doesn't want to, he doesn't have to. So people think that he must, and
Hmm.
he doesn't have to. So, and many times he doesn't have a mass to miss. In other words, the he might not be in a situation where he could go to mass. It happens a lot with travel. There's no altar possible anywhere, but you can't subject the mass to all sorts of indignity in order to say mass to fulfill some idea that you have to say mass. Some priests have this idea: I must say mass. I must say mass. No, and for example, it's absolutely forbidden to say mass in a bedroom. So to say mass in a hotel room, absolutely forbidden. Very strict.
And why is that, Your Excellency? Well,
Do I need to explain that?
no, no, no. I'm saying this is in canon law. Sorry, this is in
Yes.
canon law, and that's why when you make arrangements, mass coordinator for the clergy, it needs to be in a
In a public place that is not a bedroom, you see. Yeah, but that's a case where, you're traveling. The only opportunity you have is to say it in the hotel room. You can't do that.
$10 from Andrew McFarlane. Greetings from the Oregon coast. Thank you, Andrew. If you've got a question, please feel free to put in the chat. $10 from Zvisky. Thank you. What should young men do today if they are not called to a religious vocation, nor to be a husband or father?
Well, they need to lead a life of perfect chastity then, and avoid all the occasions, just as everybody does. But their occasions might be stronger, and so they don't have the outlet of marriage, and they also don't have all of the helps of religious life. See, so in that case, being a single man is could be difficult in that regard. They should stay close to the sacraments. They should go to confession frequently, Holy Communion frequently, and just lead a good life and attend mass as often as they can. And, uh, very good spiritual life.
They could consider applying to be a lay helper somewhere, Your Excellency. Who
Oh, yeah,
knows?
that's possible. Yeah.
Fair to remember, $12. This is from Sue Brennan. Thanks for my answering the email question. There goes my glimmer of hope. Jimmy Hunchen, £5. Thank you, Jimmy. Protestants all believe that the voice in their head is the Holy Ghost, so they are united in that. I think this was the question about
Well,
Protestant
yeah,
emphasis.
I'm sorry.
Moira, £5. Thank you, Moira. What is the church's stance on the permissibility of torture?
Oh. Well, it was commonly used in the Middle Ages, and it was considered legitimate in the Middle Ages. Um, I really don't know. The church never, the Inquisition, contrary to what the Protestants say, the monks did not apply torture, and the monks simply judged concerning whether these persons were heretics or not, and because they were doing a lot of damage, not only religiously but socially as well as the Albigensians. And but it was considered a capital crime, state crime, to be a public heretic, and that's why they were burned at the stake, which was the reason for that was the punishment for treason in the Middle Ages. You have to understand that in the Middle Ages they had come from barbarism. In other words, they still retained to a certain extent some customs from old times that seem to be a little rough in our times.
But you don't object to the burning of heretics at the stake here.
No, as a matter of fact, Leo X condemned those who said you should not burn heretics. No, but I mean, I'm not, I don't think we should go out and burn heretics today, but just saying that it is something that it's a capital punishment. It's a form of capital punishment. I mean, whatever you want to do, it's a form of capital punishment. And but it was because of treason. In other words, that if you were a public heretic, you were against the state and ruining the state. And that's why that was imposed. But the church never lit the fires or anything like that. But torture, I don't know if the church approves of it or not. It just never came up in my moral theology.
You need to look into it.
Yes, yeah, I don't know. It's never used today, or seldom used.
If you follow up, Moira, we might be able to task a cleric with looking that up.
Yes, I will look it up. I never had that question.
Just follow up by email. Tommy Lee, £5. Thank you, Tommy. Your Excellency, what is your opinion of Franco's Spain?
Again, I don't know a great deal about Franco. He was a pious Catholic, I'll say that. I think that his regime was 1,000% better than the opposite, which was communist. And the
Pornography was banned.
Yes, and he had the relic of Saint Teresa of Avila on his desk. No, he was great for Spain. So I think that. I don't know everything about him, but what surprised me was that he gave the Spain back to the very monarchy that he defeated, this corrupt monarchy that he defeated in the 1930s. That shocked me. I was at a Cone when I read that. I thought, what is he doing? And look at Spain today. It's a wreck.
So you're a Carlist, Your Excellency?
I guess so. I read about that in history. I would. Who's
because
the Carlos? I think you.
Because the claimant you're talking about comes from the House of Bourbon. The Bourbon dynasty is who Franco handed this off to.
Okay, and then I'm all mixed up on it because there was a Carlist insurrection.
Yes, in support of that claimant, as opposed to the House of Bourbon. Because
yeah, I'm really out to lunch on
all that
Spanish
stuff.
politics.
All right.
I should keep my mouth shut.
But you're objecting to the fact that despite what Franco had done, he handed this off to an American educated kid who then took over a constitutional monarchy of Spain, yeah. and we have modern
Spain is down
modern
the drain
Spain
right now, yeah.
Right. So, Tommy, I hope that answers your question regarding His Excellency would have to look more into Franco if he had time, if he had 1,000.
And more I just remember there was a Carl that seemed to be on the correct side back in the 18th century, or there was a Carl something. So that's why I'm thinking. But I should keep my mouth shut because I don't know.
Right. So I was going to say, if you have questions about the Habsburgs, His Excellency has you covered. But I think probably succession in Spain, this might be
that's kind of fuzzy in my mind.
Right. That was regarding Ferdinand VII, Your Excellency.
All right.
Brandon Eberhardt, $10. Thank you, Brandon. What are His Excellency's thoughts on older teenagers getting jobs outside the home? How do you weigh the benefits of gaining work experience against the dangers of being exposed to bad influences? Oof.
Well, when you go out of the home, you're going to be exposed to bad influences everywhere. There's very few exceptions to that. So, but I would say that the bad influences in staying away from the universities and going out and working some job in the trades is far, far less than what you would get at the university. In other words, I think the universities are just just agents of hell, as far as I'm concerned. And I just told somebody a few weeks ago, if you send your kids off to the university, 90% chance that they will lose their morals and their faith.
And this is different from attending a community college for some courses and staying at
Yes,
home.
yes, staying at home. If you commute, that reduces it, but still also what you're taking. If you're taking engineering, there's not a lot of corruption possible in engineering. But if you're taking liberal arts or anything to do with that, a lot of those courses, which are not very popular today because that's not going to get you a job.
Right. There's not any philosophy on how does a bridge identify its gender,
Right.
as opposed to
Yes,
what
yes.
you might
But
face.
I mean, it's just they're hellholes, the universities, and as Dr. Kumara Swami said, who received his doctorate degree in medicine from Harvard, he said the going to college is a waste of time because they tell you that you know everything when in fact you emerge knowing nothing. That's what he said about it. And he was in a good position
Right.
to make that comment.
My side, $2 Canadian. Thank you, my side. Have you ever met Father Hess? Do you have any
No,
thoughts
I
on
never
him?
met him. I just know of him. I think he's deceased now.
Jimmy Hunjin, £5. Jimmy, I'm just looking at super chats only, so I can't see what you're making this comment in reference to, but he says, Our Lord gave us Father Chikata, who used his to teach theology. I think it might have been in reference to something, a talent perhaps. Sense of humor. Father Chikata used his sense of humor to teach theology.
I always said if he had not become a priest, he could have become a stand-up comedian.
For sure.
Yes.
The Fidalgo Files, $10. Thank you. When a priest sets up an altar for Mass in a makeshift location, a garage, hotel room, VFW hall, is there some minimum setup required for both appropriate dignity and sacramental validity?
Sacramental validity, no. Dignity, yes, as best you can. You have to have an altar stone and the proper candles, and yes, there's a lot. It takes a long time to set up, actually. Yeah, altar cloths and everything. Yes.
I think that he's probably asking for a list, Your Excellency.
That's Father Bear's department.
If you want to know that, if you send an email and it's not an idle question, you're actually asking because you're considering being a Mass coordinator, please feel free to send a contact us, and there's a checklist that Father could easily send you. My side, $5 Canadian. Thoughts on monetization on YouTube from ads? You can remove most possibly scandalous ads and only mostly have decent ones, but never 100%. Do you understand that question, Your Excellency?
I understand the question, but I don't know how to answer it. I know nothing about those things.
So we have monetization on our channels, and we can go in and block certain things. So, for example, we have gambling blocked. We have, pornographic things that are blocked. But this person is pointing out that you can't block everything. Is that okay? That sometimes an ad would come up? I don't know, encouraging you to become
tolerable, and there's always I would just say a balance between the good versus the bad that might come about, and if the good outweighs the bad, then it's all right.
I suppose the example is, there's an ad for a Protestant super church, one of these mega churches that comes up here. I can't imagine that
I don't think any of our faithful would be interested
would be pulled away from that advertising. And in fact, we can be grateful that Protestant church is contributing to our channel. Nicole for $5. Thank you, Nicole. On mystical theology, do you prefer Father Garrigou Lagrange's Three Ages or Father Royo Marine's The Theology of Christian Perfection?
Royo Marine has some. We used him 1 year, and we found out that he has some modernist tendencies here and there. So no one can beat Garrigou Lagrange.
His Excellency has a slight bias here. So when you say that, does that mean you don't recommend Royo Marine at all?
I don't recommend Royo Marine. No.
Okay. This is what is important. I would say to my fellow lay people that you have to rely on clergy to be able to spot these things that we wouldn't be able to spot on our own because we don't have the training. L. Banishevsky, I'm patting myself on the back, Your Excellency, only because he told us how to pronounce his name correctly.
I just could imagine what you would have done with it.
$20. Thank you, Mr. Banishevsky. Your Excellency, could you explain what the Anglican ordinariate is and how we should understand it from a sedevacantist perspective?
As I recall, it's that, how would you say, that situation that was set up by Ratzinger, I
Benedict the
think.
16th, I think, Your
Yeah,
Excellency.
for Anglicans that were turned off by the use of women priests in the Anglican Church. And so they have this situation whereby, who knows with Vatican II theology whether they are considered Catholics or non-Catholics or somehow in partial communion. I
Were
have
they
no idea.
required to be ordained?
I have no idea.
Hmm.
So no, I don't know. It just that's all I know about it. What I just
So
said.
how would we understand it from a sedevacantist perspective that that was something an innovation came up with by Benedict the
Well,
16th?
any kind of ecclesiastical act he was incapable of,
Mm.
just like the UPS man. That's about this same ability that he would have to make decisions like that. All right. So
Well, the
nothing
UPS
against the
man was
UPS
never
man.
so well
Yeah,
dressed, Your
yeah,
Excellency.
yeah. That's true. He didn't have the red shoes,
Those
but
red
and
Prada
there's nothing
shoes.
against UPS men. They're very, very efficient in what they do.
We have more than one UPS driver, I think, among our faithful.
Okay.
So,
Uh,
Oka Jamos, €5, thank you. Could His Excellency explain if and why the Church changed her stance on usury? It seems that any interest was considered usurious for a long time.
Uh, the one of the reasons is that, and probably the principal reason is that money was not considered as something whereby like a means of investment. And so you can charge, for example, if I could invest $1 million in something and make 10% on it, and you come and say I want to borrow 10%, I want to borrow $1 million. I could legitimately say to you, well, I will have a loss because that's 10% I'm losing. You must give me 10%. All right. That is known as incurring a loss, and that's a title for it. You see, but what you can't do is just put a price on money. In other words, here's $1 million, and we're putting a price on money alone. That is usury. That is still condemned. See, but if there's a loss now in the present economy, stock markets and interest and banks, etc., which was very common, in the past 200 years, even before that, then you easily incur a loss by putting capital here, there, and the other place. So but in the Middle Ages, there was no way in which to incur that loss. So then the usurers were just charging you to lend you money. It'd be like charging you to, if you wanted to buy a bottle of Coca-Cola, well, I'm charging you for the drinking of it. You see, you can't do that.
Right.
That's known as a fungible good. That means the very use of it destroys it. You see, so the very use of the money that is lended in a way destroys it. In other words, is it's nothing left of it. You have to pay it back, of course, but it's known as a fungible good, and so that's where it usually is still condemned. Excuse me, still condemned, but because it's so easy to incur a loss with capital today, it is considered legitimate.
In Passim, Your Excellency, could we state that the modern financial system is set up by the enemies of our Lord? It's set up and controlled by the enemies of our Lord.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I mean, there's
We say largely controlled.
well, I don't know. I mean, it really that doesn't bear on it. In any case, the case whether you can legitimately expect interest from the bank, for example, and if you can, then legitimately you can charge interest from what you would lose. That's really the only question. I mean,
Sure.
it's immaterial who's who and what's what.
Right. Mr. Pierce for $5. Thank you, Mr. Pierce. Is there a line in the sand which would make you doubt the thesis? What if the Novus Ordo did away with the College of Cardinals or the papacy?
Well, we'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it. I would say that's impossible. It is a dogma of faith that the successors of St. Peter will continue until the end of time. That's Vatican I, dogma of faith. So I would say that would be against the faith.
Zvisky, $5. Thank you, Zvisky. How do we determine if certain good inspirations are God's will or a desire of our own will?
Well, you have to, uh, yes, distinguish what are voices of your own imagination and what is from God. The First of all, God does not talk to you. It would be very, very rare that there would be a locution. God speaks to you, quote unquote, in ideas and movements. You see, and the question would be: is this something right and good? Is this something better than its opposite? In other words, to become a priest is better than not becoming a priest. So, do I have a vocation? See, that would be: do I have this drive and attraction to something? Do I have the qualifications for it? If I'm 85 years old and maybe it's not a good idea. There's the those are you only have moral certitude of those things, but you have to always look at your motives and also the object. Is this something better than its opposite? That would be to charity is better than not being charitable, or it's that's those are the questions to ask. But many times, your imagination can just make you think that this is God telling me to do this. And it's where you say, God made me do it. These criminals or something. No, you have to, and also you get advice. In other words, you might think, I am inclined to the priesthood, but you go and ask the priest, should I pursue this? And he might tell you, I don't think you're intelligent enough. See, and so you'd have to go on good advice. That doesn't mean the priest is infallible either. You might want to get a lot of advice. See, from various people. Sometimes people do that. They make a guru out of their local priest, and the priest says no. Well, that doesn't mean anything. He's not infallible. You could go to various other priests and see what they're. So, yeah. So that's how you deal with those things.
Lisa Stinnis, $2. Thank you, Bishop. Lisa, thank you for the chat, but I'm going to allow His Excellency to gently correct you on addressing. Would we normally address you as Bishop, Your Excellency?
That's how Protestants address their bishops.
So it'd be normal to address him as Your
Yes,
Excellency.
yes.
But thank you for the super chat, and hopefully that correction is taken in the spirit in which it's offered. Jimmy Hunchen, 20 pounds. Thank you, Jimmy. St. Vincent Ferrer condemned priests who rush the signs of the cross at Mass over the species so as to make the cross a circle, stating that circles are a sign of the devil. Was this a problem before the council?
Yes.
In general, Your Excellency?
It's very common.
Rushed Mass.
Yes, they would. Those are the signs of the cross. Yes.
It's unfortunate.
And that's one of the problems is that the priests had this idea of getting through Mass as fast as possible. So when the new Mass came in, well, it was shorter. That's great. This we get through Mass in 15 minutes, 20 minutes. No, the condition of the clergy before Vatican II was not great. And that's a very general statement because in some cases there were some very great priests. But there was a lot of that, of laxity and general decline of their spiritual lives. No, the signs of the cross should be done very carefully, and
It should be discernible as
yes,
you were.
absolutely, and there's no rush. It is the most important thing that you do during the whole day. All right, to offer the holy sacrifice of the Mass is nothing more important than that. So why rush it? Now you shouldn't, take so long that it becomes burdensome to people, but there's no reason to rush it. So you should take your time and do it right.
In my teenage years, Your Excellency, I remember serving Mass at San Juan Capistrano for a pre-Vatican II priest, and his Mass was in this same format of, I don't know if he was in a race or he was dedicated to saying the Mass as quickly as possible, but I was absolutely shocked because you're always taught as an altar server to match the pace of the priest. So whatever pace he's saying prayers at the foot, you match. And I had never said the prayers as quickly as he was doing. I was shocked. So you're saying that was common before the council. It's surprising to hear that.
Yes.
There's a question, Your Excellency, about on some of our shorts, you refer to the Messiahs, and people have mistakenly said, what is he talking about? More than one Messiahs? And because they're used to the term Messiah, so Isaiah instead of Isaias, Jeremiah instead of Jeremias. Can you explain that, and probably also talk about the numbering of the Psalms while you're at it, Your Excellency?
Oh, yes. Okay. Well, first, the S was put on words Hebrew words by the Vulgate, by the Septuagint translators who were Jews in Egypt who were translating the Old Testament. And they put the S on it. In Hebrew, it's Messiah. It's probably a rough breathing at the end. But if that comes over to Greek, Messia, that's a woman. So the S makes it a man. So all of those in Hebrew came over as as. And Jeremiah says,
So the sound came as an S.
yes. Just they put an S on it because otherwise people would think it's a woman.
Okay.
You see, so that's all the Greek Pericles. You see, all the Greeks end in S. It's just like the us in Latin. See, in Latin is a woman, us is a man. So they had to make sure that people didn't think that these people were, so, and that came over into the Vulgate. So the Vulgate in Latin has the S on all of them. The more authentic Hebrew is just Messiah and Jeremiah. That's true. But I never use it because it's typically Protestant and Novus Ordo.
So you use it as a way to hold on to a Catholic tradition, not
Yes.
because
Yes.
it's
Yes.
more correct.
Yes. The Catholic way was always to say Messias.
Okay.
All right, what was the other question?
Well, I think the follow up was if we're talking about Protestant issues, psalm numbering.
Yes, it's this Protestants follow the Hebrew numbering of the Psalter, and the Catholics follow the Vulgate numbering of the Psalter. There's a point where one psalm is broken up in the Hebrew that is not broken up in the Vulgate Psalter. So there's 150 psalms in the Septuagint Psalter and the Vulgate Psalter. Septuagint is that was done in about 200 BC in Egypt. So that is the more traditional. But the Hebrew has that break, and they have 151. No, I don't know if they.
I think
No, they don't. They have 150. Somehow
it
some
resolves. I think
it
towards
resolves
the
itself.
end.
Yes, that's not terribly important. But people use the Hebrew numbering, and then everybody gets all mixed up. I use the Vulgate numbering. Why?
Is it wrong to put the Protestant numbering in parentheses so that you can reference?
It's not really Protestant. I mean, it is Hebrew, and it has a certain authenticity because of that. But it's just no. You could put the Hebrew numbering in it, and it's all right. If you're interested in that.
Valeria, $10. Thank you, Valeria. Your Excellency, I currently have the Dewey Reams. Is this the best version of Scripture, or do you recommend another? And I think, Valeria, I'm just going to parse. Is this the best version in English
It's the only version in English.
that you recommend?
Yes.
All right, Valeria, I hope that answers your question. If you have access to another language, you can read Scripture
Everything else should be thrown in the trash can.
in English.
Yes.
His Excellency is
Yes,
referring to.
in English.
My side, $5 Canadian. Thank you, my side. Thoughts on theistic evolution in light of Dignitatis Humanae? Is it heresy or error to believe in it? The thought of the possibility disturbs me.
Dignitatis Humanae. Theistic evolution. I don't think that's
Maybe referencing the wrong document, but the right concept, Your Excellency. What is theistic evolution? Maybe that could be the question.
I don't know what theistic evolution is. So
I think maybe there's a reference to the idea you've talked before that you would have wanted Pius XII to have more clarity on the theory of evolution, that he allowed a little too much liberty in discussing the question.
Yes, he said it could be discussed. Yes, I mean it's in Genesis that man was made from the slime of the earth. I don't see how you can get around that.
You don't see how you get to an ape.
How do you get from an ape?
The ape gets some
slime or something. He turns into slime first, or what? It's absurd. And also there would be as much, how would you say, force, or I'm speaking very humanly, as for God to make a man out of an ape or out of slime is the same for him. He doesn't need to have a model or something like this. Ape looks good. Maybe I'll fashion him into a man. Everything that is simple for him. So to make him, he could have made him out of water or out of anything,
or out of stones, as referred to in Scripture.
He has complete control over the substance of everything, and so No, evolution was devised in order to deny the creator. Creator is the first element, you might say, or the most basic element of religion, that we are created by God and therefore we owe him homage. That is the first notion of even natural, what we call natural religion. Get rid of the creator and you destroy religion altogether. I say that evolution is as insane and crazy, actually more crazy and more insane than the Greek gods and the Roman gods. Yes, that has more credibility than the myth. I call it the modern mythology of evolution, because it's based on the principle that something comes from nothing. And if you think that something comes from nothing, you are really crazy. You should go to the psychiatrist. So,
His Excellency, as always, speaking, plainly there.
I tend to beat around the bush.
Jimmy Hunjin, 10 pounds. Thank you, Jimmy. This was in reference I said earlier about engineering. He said the gender of bridges could be a new point of discussion for a modernist bishop's synod. Talk. Nicole, $10. Thank you, Nicole. Royal Marine seems to have some failures in his section on extraordinary phenomena. He exaggerates the explanatory power of experimental psychology. What did you think of his doctrinal section?
I don't know, because I didn't use him. Father Desposito did, and he said, I think we should put it aside because there's a few things. He said overall it's good, but there's a few things in there that are...
You were not happy with?
Yeah.
Okay.
Gary was completely perfect.
Lisa Stennis, $50. Your Excellency, this was the lady who had originally said, thank you, Bishop. Thank you, Your Excellency. Correction graciously received.
Well, what
She had said, thank you, Bishop, earlier.
yes,
We
okay,
offered her the correction, and
yes.
she came back with a larger donation.
Yeah. Although, tell her, a lot of people make that mistake. I don't think much about it, but
Right.
it is, Your Excellency is correct.
My side, $2 Canadian. She said she meant humani generis, not dignitatis humanae. And I think that's what...
Theistic evolution. Again, what do you mean by that? I think it means that the God is involved in evolution. In other words, that he is slowly creating, and instead of creating all the species at once. That's creationism. If he is creating, that's creationism. See, if that's what they mean by that. That doesn't offend the faith. I mean, if God wants to make a bear out of a turtle, it's perfectly, any day of the week he can do that. He can make a frog into a prince and then a prince back into a frog. He has complete control over the whole being of every created thing. See, so again, I'm not sure what that means. I'm not a big, as soon as you say the word evolution, it just makes red flags go up.
All right. So I think I'll just follow up on that.
If she could tell me what theistic evolution means.
If you could help His Excellency a bit, unless he answered it in the question already, inadvertently, by us discussing in general. I'll give His Excellency a break. He's been going nonstop, and note we've got about 20 minutes left in the stream. So if you have questions, as you can see, we've had so many super chats today. I haven't even been able to look at the regular stream of chats. But if you are just coming on now, or you haven't done so already, please make sure to hit the like button and let us know where you are watching from, so we can let you know. Romania, Your Excellency, I think this was maybe our first time we've seen someone from Romania. Jimmy Hunjin, 10 pounds. Thank you, Jimmy. Did His Excellency hear that it was a new springtime in the church during the 1970s? Oh. I know that Montini thought so, and he kept speaking of the fruits of the council.
Yes. There was so much optimism in the 1960s and 1970s that the Protestants will be flocking back into the Catholic Church, and the church is just going to be in the most wonderful condition. Vocations and everything is just it's coming up roses. There was the optimism in the 60s and the 70s. We know better now. But yes, and Cardinal Cook, who was the Archbishop of New York, said Vatican II is the springtime of the church. Famous last words.
Right.
So, no, there was tremendous optimism.
See how that's worked out. I suppose.
Yes, yeah.
El Paso, Brooksville, Lithuania, Lakeland, Florida. Clarification from my side, Your Excellency, the theistic evolution that our Lord directed the evolutionary process. That's the idea.
Well, in order directing it is not sufficient. He would have to actually intervene and create. He could, he could create a man out of a gorilla. He could do that, but there's absolutely no evidence for that. And sacred scripture says it's out of the slime of the earth. Thou art dust, and unto dust thou shalt return. It's not thou art gorilla, and unto gorilla thou shalt return.
I'm remembering a much earlier episode, Your Excellency, if you said, you look in the mirror, you don't see yourself, you see a gorilla. I don't remember what that was in reference to, but
Right.
gorillas are a very evocative image.
That's what chimpanzees.
Let's see. If there is a super chat that was not answered, I've gone through and I've tried to double and triple check that I've seen. YouTube's tabs are not always helpful. Sometimes when the chat involuntarily refreshes, I'm not able to see all of the questions, but I've done my best to go back and cover all of the super chats. Another one from Jimmy Hunch and £2. Father Chicada called the springtime a nuclear winter.
Yes.
For those who never had a chance to experience Father Chicada, I direct you to the internet and YouTube. It's a way for those of you who never had a chance to know him personally to see his personality on display.
Yes,
it comes through
very
even
funny.
through the internet.
Very funny.
He is desperately missed, and as Bishop Sanborn often says, he had the temerity to die on us just when we really needed him.
And he told me back when he was in his late 60s, I expect to live until I'm 80 or 85. He was always optimistic about everything. And but that came as a bad shock to us. And as I said, he kept things light. We're always dealing with heavy, horrible things, but he always kept things light. We miss him very bad.
Clarification on the CMRI point you made earlier, Your Excellency. Are you recommending faithful stay home instead of fulfilling their Sunday obligation at one of these chapels?
Let's see. Strictly speaking, you cannot fulfill a Sunday obligation in any private chapel because the canon law says that you can only fulfill your obligation in a church. That means a parish church or a semi-private oratory, which is like a seminary chapel. But that has to be all approved by the bishop of the diocese. So strictly according to canon law, you cannot fulfill the law because you don't have those available to you. There is, you might say, the obligation to save your soul and to practice the faith, and I would say that's important, But all I'm saying is that I cannot recommend it. The decision is yours, but I cannot recommend it.
Is the First Amendment in conflict with Catholicism?
Oh, this is a big one. The First Amendment was made, or the Bill of Rights was made, in order to please the South. Patrick Henry complained about certain things in the Constitution that would impose upon the Southern states. So James Madison composed the Bill of Rights. One of those things was that the Congress would not impose a state religion on the states. In other words, there would be no national state religion, but the states could have. It did not, in any way impede the states from continuing to have their state religions, which they had at the time. In Virginia, there was Anglicanism or Episcopalianism, and the southern states in general were Anglican-oriented. The North was all Puritan, Massachusetts especially. See, so those were very strongly established religions in those times. So in that sense, because the states were considered to be sovereign, in the sense that they were giving up some of their sovereignty to the federal government, but mostly it was a United States. In other words, and the Congress was the only thing that the federal government was supposed to do was run foreign policy and the post office. If you really look at the Constitution, and its powers are very, very slim. So that was the idea, is that you're not going to interfere with our state religions. And so in that sense, if you understand it in that sense, there's nothing offensive to the Catholic faith. What is offensive to the Catholic faith is that the states is the mentality, the Masonic and naturalistic mentality of a state without religion. In other words, a nation without religion. And that was very much present in the founding fathers and in the also the states that all took the idea that we won't have an established religion. See, that is contrary to Catholic faith. See, and George Washington said he wrote to the Jews in Massachusetts, I think, or Rhode Island, that we respect your consciences, and you'll have no interference, and this is not merely tolerance, this is a right, and that mentality is contrary to the nation does not profess any religion, is contrary to the Catholic faith. And that was the first time in history in which there was a religionless state. So that's contrary to.
So would you postulate that flows from the First Amendment itself?
No, I think the First Amendment, no, I would say the First Amendment, I think, was simply a concession to the states. But the problem was the mentality.
What is developed?
What was already there. I mean, the only time in the Declaration of Independence that you see God is the creator, and he's the author of all the rights of man, which is from John Locke, who said that the only religions that should be banned is Roman Catholicism and atheism. Thank you very much. And Jefferson was loaded with John Locke, and Masonry, George Washington was a Grand Master of Freemasonry. And that's typical of Freemasonry, that it's above all religions, but it's not against religions, you see. That is contrary to Catholic teaching, because Christ is the King, and he is the head of the Catholic Church. The only thing that has a right to exist as a religion is the Catholic faith. See, and all peoples and all nations should be on their knees before Christ the King, the head of the Catholic Church. That is Catholic doctrine. See, so I'd say the United States was poisoned by 18th century liberal thinking, Masonic thinking concerning the union of church and state. And that's why we have abortion. That's why more than 60 million babies have been killed. Because how do you do a law without morality, without a religion? If the Catholic faith had been established, not one baby would have been legally aborted, not a single one, because the Catholic Church would have said veto. I don't. The bishops would have said absolutely not. See, but you see, it's all subjectivistic, and this is my conscience, this is my body, all of that stuff. That's what we have. We have the situation that we have today, this lawlessness. It's all from that 18th century mentality of you can do whatever you think is right, and you have a right to your conscience, whether it's erroneous or not.
So I think a lot of people get defensive, Your Excellency, about this because they want to love their country, and they'll say, well, where is the sedevacantist stronghold in the world? It's not in Europe, it's in America, and it's because of our amazing and wonderful Constitution. And where would we be, where would Catholicism be without the amazing Constitution, Your Excellency? And Father Patrizzi, in this weekend's Catechism Q&A in Pottstown, he pointed out the absurdity of the separation of powers, and I think maybe that could just be a small commentary you could make broadly on the Constitution. Why is it absurd to have a separation of powers, and why is America the leader in this insanity?
Well, that the executive should be enforcing a law that he doesn't agree with. I'm against abortion, but it's the law. That it's contrary to common sense, or that the Supreme Court decides what is constitutional. There's nothing, by the way, in the Constitution that says that's one of its powers.
Right, that's John Marshall's.
Yes, that is invented, you see. So you have these rogue powers, these three powers that are, and here we have judges, 2-bit judges, deciding what Trump can do and what he can't do. This is division of powers. And it's absurd. No, it was cooked up by Montesquieu, who was one of those 18th century creeps. and it
Creeps
all
is the gentlest word
yeah
His
yeah
Excellency
yeah,
is
yeah.
using. He has
Dirt
a
bags. Dirt bags is another good
big
one.
bags of dirt, His
Yes, big bags
Excellency.
of dirt.
You can think of that what
The
you would like.
they're all the same. I mean, it was all of these. Nobody had ever said that before. A division of powers, but it was Montesquieu, and so then that was it. We're going to create a division of powers. The whole idea was that you don't have any of them with too much power. But look at American politics. We might have a shutdown of the government because of
I think
that.
almost certainly,
Yeah,
Your
it's
Excellency.
probably already happening as we speak because of this ridiculous system.
Well, Your Excellency, if we didn't have this amazing system, we wouldn't have Catholicism preserved in America.
Well, that's another thing is that by, we would say, one good effect of a bad system is that the Catholic Church was given complete liberty here to function without any interference of the government, unlike France, unlike England, unlike
Germany.
Germany, all of the European countries
Russia.
where the Spain, where at one point or other the Catholic Church was persecuted. And here we had complete liberty. That is a good effect of a bad system.
The bad system shouldn't get credit for that. Good
No,
effect.
no, it's just that, well, because everything's permitted. Snake handlers and all are permitted. It's true. It's true. So it's just we call that paroxydens in philosophy. In other words, it's an accident of something that is substantially wrong. But
The U.S. Constitution doesn't get credit for the church flourishing under its strange rules, where a snake handler is the same as a Catholic priest.
yes, yes, yeah, it's
Is separation of church and state in conflict with Catholicism?
yes,
And why is that, Your Excellency?
because there are two societies which help man in two different ways, but which are related. Man is both body and soul. The state concentrates on his bodily needs and his temporal needs, the church on his supernatural needs. And because there's a single man, we might say, a single subject that is united, the church should be distinct from the state, but it should work together with the state. And that's the way Catholic nations always worked in the Middle Ages and in up to 1789. And even Protestants had established religions, in their various regions of Germany and all. That was the whole idea of the Treaty of Westphalia, that whatever you have conquered as far as Protestant lands, well, those will be Protestant, state religions. England had a state religion. I mean, it still does typically. I mean, officially it does. I mean, it's kind of a joke, but the Lutherans had state religions. There were cantons in Switzerland, Catholic cantons and Protestant cantons. I think that still exists even.
Yes, yes.
And
it's much better in the South, Your Excellency. It's where you see crucifixes inside hotels. and
yes,
other
yeah,
places.
but there's some German-speaking Catholic ones, but because religion and state go naturally together, so the separation is something unnatural. It's like pulling a man apart.
Could it be said that Americanism, which was condemned by Leo XIII, had nothing to do with the founding documents of America or the way America?
Well, he criticized. He said, "You're very proud of this, but be careful; it's going to come back and bite you." That's what he said. So.
So the implied question, Your Excellency, is how can an American be patriotic while also being honest with the Catholic perspective about the founding documents and the governing documents of the country?
Well, every nation has its good points and bad points in history. All right. So, but your nation is an extension of your family. So, despite whatever defects of government there is still a dependence on the whole system of the nation that everyone needs to respect in order to benefit. You see, so we need doctors and lawyers and people running the grocery stores. And there we need law that governs all that in a orderly way. We need police. We need firemen. That's all part of a country. We're all dependent one on another. And so that's where your real patriotism is in this country that has this big network of dependencies. And all of that is very good. And so and you should be loyal to that. You should even defend the nation with your life. And so that's what you rejoice in when you're patriotic to the United States. You're not necessarily saying this is the best form of government that ever existed on the face of the earth. Some might say that because they get excited about America, but it has some very serious defects. Yes,
Objectively
very
speaking.
serious defects. It's a wreck. And we're seeing that now, as I said, some two-bit judge telling the president of the United States what he can. All of those things should be judged by the Supreme Court immediately, instead of going through these lower courts, these whatever.
You can see what His Excellency's thought on that is. And we had a super chat from Sue Brennan, $12. 2-bit judges. I'm stealing that. So we're in our final few minutes of the stream, so I'm going to just say that super chats are now ended. If a super chat does come in, I will save it and I will ask it of His Excellency in next month's stream, which it's going to be next month tomorrow. So we'll have a stream soon and you'll be able to ask that question. So your question won't be lost. I just have to make a cutoff now so His Excellency can actually get to bed at some point. My side, $2 Canadian. Thank you, my side. Has His Excellency ever read any of John Salza's material?
No.
N. Terrell, $2. I was affirmed in my pronunciation there, Your Excellency. Did your family support Kennedy or Nixon in 1960?
Oh, Kennedy, because he was a Catholic.
And he was.
We were
And he
Irish
was
Catholics.
Irish.
I mean, there was no question. He was Irish and he was Catholic. That's all you had to say. But at that time, the difference between Republicans and Democrats was not that strong. It was whether we would have Medicare maybe or not. Or
Not whether men were men or women were women.
no, there was none of this moral stuff. It was just who is the better, candidate to run the country.
Associations with labor, for example.
Yes, things that you could argue about on both sides, and you might. But it was nothing like it is now. I mean, nothing. There was no radicalization or anything. So, I mean, Nixon was a personality that.
I'm guessing your parents probably voted for Eisenhower before Kennedy.
Yes, voted for Eisenhower. Adlai Stevenson was pretty left. I mean, it's like communist. So at that time, the term was pinkos. And no, they voted for Eisenhower. But, everybody loved Roosevelt. Roosevelt was like a god. And he saved the country from the Depression, which I know he didn't do. The war saved the country from the Depression, and he was a wreck, and everything about him was bad. But they did, he had such an aura for that was Roosevelt was just on a throne for everybody.
Right. Well, when you say you use the term pinko, Your Excellency, I'm reminded Nick Fuentes said on a stream recently this idea of baby boomers being time capsules, that you all represent an era that has long passed. There was no diversity or crime in the way that it was.
Right.
And when you speak, there are certain expressions, and people have to imagine, well, what was that like when people referred to pinkos, for example?
Yeah, pinkos. That was everyone. A lot of pinkos. 50s.
Okajamos €5. Thank you, Oka. Is apparent age creationism consistent with the faith, meaning that God's creations were mature upon creation, having a kind of superficial history? Is this the position of St. Augustine, Your Excellency, that the rocks that appeared to be very, very old, but at the time of creation,
St. Augustine said that this 7 days of creation, I guess 6. Could have been long eons. He did say that. That is not against the faith, because day in Hebrew could mean something that a 24-hour day or a long period of time. Just like someone might say, "In my day, we didn't do that." You see, in my epoch, in my era, we didn't do that, or we did do that. So it could refer to a long period of time. No, that's not contrary to faith, but that God created everything is the faith.
Nicole for $5. Thank you, Nicole. Now that Bishop McKenna has passed, is there a possibility of a Dominican Third Order anywhere? How could one go about starting one? Who could it be under?
Well, in order to have a Dominican Third Order, you need a Dominican First Order, and that's impossible because you cannot reproduce the Dominicans as such, because the Dominicans still exist and they are materially the same order, so you can only do a knockoff, as I said. There's kind of there was an imitation of the Dominicans, but you can't do a a real order. No.
Someone had floated this question when we were up in Massachusetts, just to me privately, Your Excellency, and I had said there's nothing to stop you from following the rule of the Dominican Third Order or choosing a patron, even though it hasn't been given to you as a name, for example, Brother Thomas Aquinas, as it might be. That there's nothing to stop you from that, and that you will gain graces from observing the Dominican
Sure.
rule.
Sure.
So just because there's not a structure doesn't mean you can't follow it.
Right. You would need Dominican priests in charge of it. We don't have Dominican priests. I mean, it's not possible.
Jimmy Hunchin for £5. Thank you, Jimmy. I have a set of 18th century French breviaries, but I'm unsure as to whether they are infected with Gallicanism. What should I do with them? Send them to Nantes for inspection?
18th century French breviaries, they could have been infected with Jansenism. A lot of the changes that were introduced by the Jansenists into the breviary in the 18th century were accepted by John the 23rd.
Oh, they messed with the breviary.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So you'd have to look at it, see the publisher, see if it had the approval of the king, for example. So a lot of the Jansenist literature does not have the approval of the king.
All right, Jimmy, I hope that answers that question. Tom P86 for $20. Thank you, Tom. I recently moved 1,100 miles from Indiana to Florida to Queen of All Saints. I've heard the book, The Mystical City of God, is problematic. Could His Excellency provide guidance?
Well, it was condemned by Pius VI. And one of the reasons for the condemnation was that she says at the beginning, if you don't accept this, you're going to hell, or some. That's a paraphrase, but in other words, you must accept this, or otherwise it's sinful. That alone puts the stamp on it that this is something unacceptable. Also, I'm told that she says that the priest consecrates the blood of Mary together with the blood of Christ. That's a heresy. So, and
there were certain theological questions that were resolved in the Scotus school.
Yes, that's the other thing is
by
that
coincidence.
Yes, all of these Scotus doctrines, which are, I'd say, 98% wrong. That is in the disputes, theological disputes, they were all resolved in favor of the Scotists. I would tend to think that there was somebody maybe ghostwriting some of that stuff, and maybe a Franciscan, that was ghostwriting it. I mean, there's a lot of signs in it that, and also, where does she get all this information about our Lord's early life?
I think a lot of people are excited about hidden knowledge, sensational ideas. That's why Anna Catherine Emmerich is also so popular, Your Excellency. People want to know the extended director's cut that they didn't get in scripture, and so they seek after these things.
Well, that's almost a sinful curiosity, though. I mean, we have sacred scripture. We have our Lord chose to have a hidden life, and we accept that. And we only know that he was lost in the temple. That's the only thing that we know of his hidden life. And you're reading things that are at best of dubious origin. So why read it? Why waste your time on something that's dubious, that does not have the stamp of approval?
And I would say, Tom, maybe the biggest thing for me, at least, is that her canonization was stopped on behalf of this.
Yes.
Because of the book. It says
Yes.
Propter Librum in the text.
Yes.
So the book was the cause of her canonization being stopped, her process.
Yes.
So if that's not enough of a condemnation for you, I don't know what else might be. Abena Anderson, this is 89. This would be Danish kroner. I've been listening to His Excellency for the past 9 months. I've learned so much about the Catholic faith. I appreciate His Excellency's intelligence and honesty. Thank you, Sophia from Denmark. Well, you've got a watcher and listener in Denmark, Your Excellency, for your next visit.
I have to go to Denmark.
To Copenhagen.
Yes.
And last...
That's Copenhagen.
Copenhagen.
Yes.
Is Hagen an Anglicism?
They pronounce it Copenhagen.
Copenhagen.
Yeah.
I appreciate the correction on the capital of the kingdom.
Linguistics was never your let's say your forte.
His Excellency will insert any field in there, and then you'll have that text afterwards. Seti Trad, $5. Last super chat and last question for today's stream. What should a person do if they are already halfway through a college degree?
Well,
This was
again,
in relation to what
there's a couple of things. What are you taking? That's one question. Secondly, where are you? Are you living in a dorm? Uh, what university are you in? There's a lot of
What
factors
what what
that
you're studying?
what you're studying. Yes, what courses you're in. I'd have to. That's a lot to find out.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll close with today is Tuesday, Your Excellency. You had a pretty busy Monday, even though it was a double of the first class, and so did the seminarians. What was going on there?
Well, we had a number of things. One was minor order tonsure and minor orders to seminarians, and then we had a number of confirmations. So that involved so many people that we had to do all that in our chapel in Pottstown, which is about 35 miles away, which means we had to pack up all of the things necessary for that, which is a lot. And we had to run that ceremony there, and then we have to pack up everything again and bring it back. That was a lot of work for the seminarians. So I gave them an extra day off because their day off was kind of ruined. But it was a beautiful ceremony, and it's nice to see the seminarians progress in orders. So
Someone was quite heartened by the fact that the White House had put out an acknowledgement of St. Michael's feast day because in the Novus Ordo it's shared among different angels.
yes, I
And so
see.
there's a suspicion there's a trad somewhere in
there's
the communications department. And if that trad watches, please you feel free to signal using the contact us form. Your information will be safe with us.
yes.
As always, actually, these live streams go longer sometimes. Today it was 2 hours. Thank you for 2 hours of your time. Especially as you say, it was a day off, so it would have been a day off for you, and you're coming in on a day off to answer these questions, and it's appreciated. And we look forward to another live stream on this channel next month. Obviously, we have other live streams, Leo Watch, etc., that people can count on. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.